All right, everybody smile.
Do you guys want to take a selfie?
If you want to be in a... Sure. Is that everybody? All right, I think I got it. Thanks for coming, guys. Yeah.
I am so excited to have the Gale Force Twins, Emily and Amanda, here at the West Marine in Fort Lauderdale. Thank you guys all so much for coming, and I know you're really excited to hear what they're going to talk about with Mahi and Tuna, but I did want to just talk a little bit about, being women in the sport and kind of getting into the sport. And you guys are from Fort Lauderdale, right?
Yeah, we were raised down in this area.
Yeah.
And I know you kind of shared with me, how you got into fishing, but I mean, you guys did it on your own. And can you talk a little bit about what drove you to that?
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking about that earlier. I wouldn't say we had like this moment where it was like, oh, we're going to start fishing, but we didn't grow up in a fishing family at all. And we just decided we saw other kids fishing on the docks in Islamorada because our family used to just vacation there, but we were always just snorkelers, sandbars. We weren't really...
Yeah, we always adventured in the saltwater world, but not necessarily fishing.
And we decided we really want to give this a try. So I would just say we really fell into it. We never planned on making a career out of it. It was always just a fun side hobby. And then it wasn't until we were in college that we were supposed to take a summer off and get a fun job. And that job was on a fishing charter boat out of Key West. And then that turned into
a giant snowball,
of
being where we are today.
It wasn't supposed to be this full-time job, but we really like it.
I just love that story. They're in pre-med, and then they're successful fishing captains.
Yeah.
And I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Because you are actual fishing captains, right? You charter your own boats and go out and do that. And I mean, that is a pretty male-dominated profession, right? And so, do you guys find any challenges with that, or is it more empowering?
I mean, I would say that getting started, no matter like if you're man or woman, whatever it is, it's an intimidating industry to jump into
definitely.
because there's a lot to learn.
For sure.
If you didn't grow up in a fishing family, I mean, we didn't have anybody teaching us, so we really learned most of what we learned on the charter boats, and I think that was part of the motivation for us starting our YouTube channel and creating content, was we wanted to teach people what we had learned from working in the industry, because when we started, it was so hard to learn what to do and how to do it.
Well, and I think that brings me to, like, for someone, that didn't grow up fishing, like you guys too, and maybe doesn't have, a sister to take with them, what would you recommend for someone to get into fishing, and what is the support that's out there for women fishing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you can definitely find it. Something that we have started to do is we've been hosting like a couple women's fishing events. I think it was last summer or maybe 2 summers ago, we hosted like a women's fish camp. And then in November this year, we're going to be hosting a women's fishing trip in Guatemala. So there's definitely resources out there. It's tough.
That's a great way to go out there.
Thank you.
So if someone wanted to take one of your charters, how would they... How would you recommend them find out about that?
I would say the best way is our email subscribers. So it's galeforcefishing.com/subscribe. We do post about these things to social media. But we always give our email subscribers like a first chance to book. And a lot of times the trips and the events fill up from that alone. Wow. So I definitely recommend the subscribing method to doing that. But we do post about it on social media. Yeah.
Definitely, follow them.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm not going to talk to you guys anymore. Let you get on with talking about catching Mahi and Tuna.
Okay,
so, can't wait to hear.
Yeah. All right. So I definitely see some familiar faces here.
From the Miami Boat Show, for sure.
Thanks for coming and watching our seminar. So we kind of already did a little intro on how we got into it. You guys know we started working on charter boats, and that's where we learned pretty much everything we're going to teach you, but also since what we've learned on the job as well. So I guess we'll just start with the lures we use, and there will be a Q&A after, just so you guys know.
Yeah, so if it's a lot of information at any point, like, we're happy to answer questions, but I think we should get into it. Okay. So we're going to talk about Mahi and tuna fishing. We'll start with the lures that we like, and then the techniques that we go for from there. So, okay, let's start with the Mahi lure.
All right.
So this would be our favorite, or personal favorite Mahi lure, and then Amanda's holding what we call our tuna lure. They look really similar, so the cool thing about these lures is that if you had the tuna lure out and you came across some mahis, you wouldn't necessarily be putting yourself in a position not to catch them, and vice versa. So we like putting lures out that are...
And we'll pass these around.
Yeah, we'll come and pass these around for sure.
So,
yeah, we'll pass these around. Yeah. So a little thing to keep in mind for mahi lures is, for us personally, and you guys can have your own experiences too, but we have light colors. So you can see there's blue and white. I would say
this here is a pink and white, so we definitely like to do blues and whites, pinks and whites.
Even pink and blue. And then another thing you'll notice is the shape of the head. It has a concave head, so that's something for mahi lures. And underneath, this is called the first lure on the top is called an island lure, and then the little lure underneath it, these are little mylars. That's something fun that we like to add. Totally optional, but we feel like it gives it an extra little flair.
Mylar that really helps it pop. We feel like you get more bites out of it. And so that's like specific to the mahi lure. The biggest difference you're going to notice between a mahi and tuna lure, in our experience, is the shape of the head. So we've got the concave head. It kind of looks like a chugger. And then the tuna lure is going to have like a bullet-shaped head. So that's great for tuna. But like we were saying earlier, you can catch both species on both lures. Because when we put these out, if you come across some birds, most of the time, which we'll tell you like how we recognize the difference between a tuna bird and a mahi bird, but sometimes you really don't know, and you'll think you're under tuna birds, and you'll put out your tuna lure or your bullet-shaped head lure, which is red and black, and then there'll be mahi there. So it doesn't mean you can't catch them on this, and that's why we like both of these so much. And for tuna specifically, we definitely like darker colors.
Right, so that's like a red and black one. Another one would be this black and purple one that we like.
And then we got another lure here.
We like feathers a lot for tunas.
So this
that's
one
a feather.
Is red and white, and it's like an actual feather. Like, so tuna love feathers. They like the bullet-shaped heads. And mahi, there's another feather-looking one. And the mahi have more of a concave-shaped head. It's kind of like the lures will more jump on the surface, and then tunas were just like a little bit like deeper underneath.
Yeah.
So that's like the difference between the two lures. So rule of thumb, mahi is like brighter colors, concave-shaped head. Tuna
darker colors,
bullet-shaped head. That's like the simplest way to put it, but once again, you can definitely and you will catch both on both lures.
Yeah. So let's move on to the rig. So for both lures, we like to use 7/0 J hooks. So this is a 7/0 J hook, and to tie the hook to the line, we just do a uni knot. That's a knot of choice, whatever you guys want to get, however you want to get your hook to your line.
As long as it doesn't slip.
Yes, as long as it doesn't slip.
You're gonna want to tie a knot straight to your 7/0 J hook. And then on the mahi lure, we put basically it's a shiny mylar underneath it with
the islander,
concave shaped head islander. And then for the tuna one, we just go straight, but you could put a shiny mylar under it. We've never really done it. Maybe we should test it.
Yeah.
Do a YouTube
video. Or you guys test it, let us know.
We could do a back and forth. Maybe same lure, one with a mylar underneath and one without. But then with the tuna one, we just go straight to the bullet shaped head. We always fish 40-pound leader with mahi and tuna. A lot of times you will see people using 60-pound, sometimes even 80-pound, which depending on if you're hoping to land like a marlin in the process, that could work, but we feel like it's really overkill and we really like to fish light tackle. I think you're gonna get more bites with a lighter leader, and I would rather risk losing the fish
and getting the bite.
And then
not getting the bite at all, because
I want to get that bite. And as long as you're fishing light drag, you don't have the drag too tight, you won't have a problem. Mahi and tuna, they don't have sharp teeth. They're not going to wear through this. So at the top,
before we get to the top, so obviously, or maybe not obviously, you guys don't want your leaders to be this short. So we'll do like a 5-foot wingspan. No rocket science. If you're 6 foot tall and yours is 6 foot, that's fine. So I would say 5 to 6 feet is great.
We do like a 5 to 6 foot leader. For the demonstration, we just put together a little, I don't know,
1 foot,
1.5 foot leader. And then to tie our leader to our main line, I like to tie some kind of loop knot. So this one is a perfection loop. That's our favorite. But any kind of loop knot you guys like would work. And then we go to a snap swivel. So the snap swivel from here would be attached to the main line.
Right. So if you're fishing on your fishing rod with braid or mono, whatever it is, you can just tie a snap swivel to that main line, and then that way if you ever wanted to change your lures out, it's really quick.
Right.
Just undo the snap and switch your lure.
I'll pass these around if you guys wanted to check them out. So the red and black is our tuna rig.
Here.
And the blue and white is our mahi rig. You can kind of look at the differences.
Do you put a vinegar strip or anything on there?
So you can
I'll pass those out.
strip or
these are like other ones that we like. You guys want to check these out.
We've done don't feel like it's needed. And a lot of times if you get a ballyhoo underneath that or a strip, the tuna or the mahi, if it's a smaller fish but still could be a keeper, it'll come and just eat the back side of the bait and won't grab the whole hook. They don't swallow the whole thing.
Islander makes a bigger one of these.
They have,
and they're longer.
yeah, and we actually have that.
Did you use those for the same fish?
So they make these as well. So you can use these as well. We prefer to use smaller lures. I personally feel like the larger ones can be overkill, but like I said,
A larger one like that, I personally would use for wahoo, like something
maybe
bigger.
Like this would be better for wahoo, or if you really want to catch some big fish, but at the same time, those would work great for us. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. It's working. I'm sorry.
A bubble stream with this one?
That one's like a concrete head.
Yeah, but does it make a bubble?
Oh no.
It's
Well,
not, like, technically a
here,
bubble.
this would be more of a.
No, I think we have one.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't think I have one here, but the ones with the holes in will make bubbles, but that will still like pop on the water, and you'll still have action. So it will do all that. So if you guys want to see,
Because you're not weighting these at all. You're surface.
Yes.
Yeah, these are all pretty much on the surface.
Yeah.
This is like a larger.
They
you
sell
could use
these
this for
here?
tuna. I think there's something similar. And then this is also a rattle jet, which is also a good mahi lure. If you look at the shape of the head between these two, this one to me says mahi, this one says tuna, but at the same time you can still catch both.
So let's move on to. All right.
So then we have one other rig before we're gonna go out mahi and tuna fishing. So mahi and tuna, we've got those lures that we're definitely gonna put out.
All right, so then this would be our next rig, and basically this is for if you're not trolling and you come across a school of fish or you want to just pitch some bait out. So we'll get into that, but this is a 5/0 circle hook, and it's 40-pound leader, and this I would tie just straight onto your main line. I would have separate rods put to the side, specifically with these circle hooks, maybe 2 or 3. And I personally like the double uni knot, just the fluoro to the main line.
We won't do a snap swivel, it's just a 5/0 circle hook, 40-pound leader straight to the main line, and we'll attach like a chunk of ballyhoo, a squid, maybe a pilchard to this one. So those are basically the 3 different types of rigs we're going to have before we go out fishing.
Yes.
Offshore.
So with that circle hook that's being passed around, something else you want to have with you on your boat is chunked bait. So before you leave the dock, I would chunk up some ballyhoo in like 1-inch chunks, maybe keep it in a bucket nearby. If you wanted to use squid, I just do the whole squid. I don't chunk up squid. If you have live bait, the circle hook's great for live bait, pinfish, pilchards, and that would be for if you find schooling fish that you don't plan on trolling past, but we'll get into that.
All right. So actually, I'm also just going to pass this around too. This is the feather. Tunas love feathers like this. I'll pass that around as well. So I guess now we'll tell you how we're specifically. We got the rig, boat's rigged. We got
chunk bait on the boat. We got our lures on the boat.
So now it's time to look for the fish. So obviously you can troll. You can sit, you can put a giant spread out and troll, and that does work. But there are times where you could spend 5-6 hours trolling and not catch anything. So our preferred method to searching for mahi and tuna and offshore species is to run and gun. So running and gunning, basically what we're gonna do is we are gonna keep all of our lines in the boat, keep the outriggers in, we're not putting out a giant spread, and we are gonna search for life.
On plane. So we're gonna get the boat moving, 30 knots, 20 knots, 50 knots, depending on how fast your boat goes.
We prefer to run and gun like 18 to 20 knots. We'll run at that speed, saves a little more fuel. But we know people and charter boats and friends that will run and gun all the way as fast as you can. Sometimes they're going,
It's great. You'll definitely burn through fuel.
But it is effective. We're covering a lot of ground, and we can find more, hopefully, that's the goal, find more fish this way.
So while we're on plane and we're running, we're looking for things like birds working. So not birds flying, but working. We call them hot birds. So that's birds that are diving down. They're maybe like flocked together. They're circling. They're very active looking birds. We also look for weed patches, so big circles of weeds, weed lines, nice lines of weeds like the seagrass. If you find scattered weeds, it's sometimes if it's all you can find, it's worth a try. Generally speaking, I like to avoid that because then they get caught into your lures. What else? Floaters. So floater.
You could find a palm frond, maybe that drifted offshore, a log. We've seen sticks of bamboo. You might find some kind of weird looking raft. We found those out there. And every once in a while you could come across a cooler that is dirty and old and has like life on it though. If you see some kind of plastic out there that's clean and white and beautiful, you're not gonna find fish on it, just pull in the boat and throw it out.
Yeah.
But if you do find something that's really old and it's been out there for a while,
it creates kind of like a upside down ecosystem. So you get the little fish under it and then the big fish under it, and it's just like this, it's really awesome when you find a floater like that.
So first we'll tell you, so we're now running and gunning, and first we're gonna do a Mahi scenario. So we're running and gunning, and we come across a really solid weed patch. So we've been traveling at 20, 30 knots, and we've been looking offshore trying to find something that looked really good. So we find that weed patch, and that's when we're gonna stop and we're gonna troll next to it. But when we do this, we're only gonna put 2 to 3 lures out, because we want to be quick. We want to get there, we want to get the lines out and get the bite. We're not going to put the riggers out in a whole spread. You can if all of a sudden you're getting great bites, but our preferred technique is just put 2 lines out. So if I were coming across a weed line, which is probably going to be Mahi, doesn't mean there won't be tuna there, but I would say that's most likely going to be Mahi in the summertime. I would put 2 of the Mahi lures out that we've passed around, and if I had time, I would put a third along out with I would put a tuna feather on that. So the 2 Mahi lures you put on port and starboard side. And how far back would you?
I would say, so for the Mahi lures, I put them back about like 15 seconds. And a lot of people, when you give them a time, they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Like 1 fish, 2 fish, like count like nice seconds. It's okay if they're in the whitewash a little bit. The Mahis don't mind eating the lures when they're in the whitewash. For the long, which would be maybe coming from a rod holder behind the helm seat or a center rod holder in your T-top if you have those, I would put that one back the furthest. So if we have 15 seconds for the port and starboard lures, I would do maybe 40 seconds for the long.
So what we're going to do, we come up to, we get our lures out, our 3 lures, and we're just going to troll past this weed line. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, but if we're not getting a bite within, we'll actually set timers when we're out there fishing.
We'll do like 20 minutes at a
try
time.
this for 20 minutes at a time on your phone. If you don't get a bite or action, you pick it up and we leave. So we'll try this out. So let's say we didn't get a bite. We throw everything back in the boat and we start running again. So if it's a weed line, it's really solid though, and you're like, why aren't I getting a bite here? Run along the weed line and you can find diving birds on the weed line.
Or sometimes you'll find actual floaters within the weed lines.
You can find a floater inside of it. So just because there's a weed line doesn't mean there's fish under it. If there's a weed line with a floater in it, a weed line with birds diving on it, or maybe there's a weed line that turns into like a giant circle patch of weeds, which you'll find sometimes.
Right, sometimes the end of the weed lines where there's like big circles, those are sometimes the best spot.
So that would be then where I would try again. I'd throw my baits back in the water, and hopefully you will catch one there.
Yeah.
So another option for landing Mahi is, I would say, like, you control past floaters and bamboo sticks and logs and whatever you find, but if I come across like something that's just like floating out there, or like a lone circle of weeds or something, that's when we're going to stop and we're going to break out the circle hook. So we pass the circle hook around, and we're going to start throwing chunk baits at it.
Right, so this is definitely a team effort. If you have one person that can stay at the helm and just try and keep the boat at that floater, at that log, that's great. We do it, the 2 of us, all the time. It's definitely manageable. So let's say we see the weed patch or the big circle or the big log. So I'll run to the bucket. It's a log. We see a log. So I run to the bucket and I start just throwing out chunks of free bait, just like free food for the Mahis.
Free food, and then I'll take a chunk of bait, whether it's like a 1-inch piece of ballyhoo,
or a whole squid.
Or you could do a live pilchard, a live
pinfish,
whatever you've got. I'm going to cast that out on the hook, and I'm going to wait for that bite. And she's just attracting the fish to the boat. Hopefully the idea is a Mahi will come up and eat my bait. So the thing with Mahi fishing is you want to make sure that they can swallow the bait. So I'm leaving the bait. We like to use spinning rods. So we got our spinning rod here. All right. So we like to use spinning rods for trolling as well. It's easy, it's simple, it's fast. So I got my spinning rod rigged with my circle hook. I'm going to leave the bail open and just like drift out my bait. I don't want to like hold onto that line and my bait just to sit there. You want your bait to float, like
as if it's the part of the other pieces.
You want to float like it's a free chunk. A free chunk doesn't just sit there; it's gonna float. So I got my free chunk. A Mahi comes and grabs it. I'm not gonna touch the line, and I'm gonna wait like 3 to 5 seconds, because the Mahi sometimes they'll grab the bait and they'll run with it before swallowing it. And you need them to swallow it to hook them. So I got him. I hooked him. I reeled him. Okay, I got him to the boat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to put that rod in the rod holder.
Loosen the drag,
and let my fish stay in the water but swim around. And that'll keep the school with the boat.
Right. So these Mahi, they like to school and they like to be with their buddies. So if you have one in the water at your boat, the rest of them are going to come over.
As long as you're giving them chunk bait.
As long as you're,
Sometimes
yes.
they stick around. Well, it depends on the day.
Every day's different, you guys know that, but generally speaking. So then we got one right at the boat hooked up, and I can see them all swimming. Now I'm going to take one of these chunk baits, put it on my circle hook, cast it out, and get myself a second one. Once I get that one to the boat, the one that's been sitting there, maybe it's getting a little tired, let's bring it in.
I'll bring mine in now, measure it, see if we need to keep it while hers sits in the water and keeps the school. So that's basically when we're going to use the circle hooks.
If for some reason you're doing this and you catch like a 30-pounder, that's one that I definitely would bring in the boat. I wouldn't just like leave it there. I'd be like, okay, this one needs to come in.
Decide which one you're going to take. And then there's basically, for Mahi, we like to say it's like a hybrid between the two. So, you know, it's a hybrid between the trolling technique and the stop and chunk bait technique. So what we'll do sometimes is if maybe we decided to troll past this log, or maybe I got a better one, it's birds. So how do we know if they're tuna or mahi birds? So most of the time, not all the time, mahi birds, you'll find like 3, 4, 5 birds circling and diving. Tuna birds, usually there's
10, 20,
15,
30.
a large group of birds. Tuna birds will also travel a lot faster. So right now we'll focus on the mahi birds. We got 4 or 5 mahi birds. I can keep up with them at around 5 to 7 knots. Okay, this is telling me it's mahi. So that's, once again, we're gonna put the mahi lures out. So I put the mahi lure out, we hook up to one, and you wanna make sure you're tight. You don't wanna just take the boat out of gear, because sometimes you'll lose the fish, but slowly back off on the throttle, try to get that boat out of gear. And then, so if I was driving the boat, Emily had the reel, she's reeling in this fish that we just caught on the birds that we were trolling past. I'll slowly take the boat out of gear, leave the reel,
and I'll start babying this fish in. I'm not gonna like rip him in, because if I do that, I'm gonna rip him away from the school. So we'll bring him in at a steady pace. Obviously, always keep the line tight, keep a bend in the rod, but bring him towards the boat, and best case scenario, the school follows.
School follow you, even when there's no weed patch, no float or anything around. But if you come off the throttle and start chunking baits, keep your fish on, and the school will follow you, and you could be a lone boat out there with nothing else, and the birds are gone, but next thing you know, you have the whole school with you. So that's basically our 3 mahi techniques.
Right, so trolling, chunk bait, and then the hybrid. You were trolling and then you started chunk baiting. All right, so now let's talk about tuna.
So tuna are similar.
So specifically for tunas, if you see 20 to 30 birds, massive amounts of birds, that's most likely tunas, and they're diving, they're aggressive, but they're moving really fast. So for the mahis, we troll maybe 5 to 7 knots. For the tunas, you might have to push it to 10, 12, 13 knots to keep up with them. If they're going really fast, they're probably skipjack tunas. If they're going, I don't know, maybe 8, 9, 10 knots, could be blackfins. So that's kind of how we know.
That's kind of how we get a gauge is sometimes we've had to go literally like 13 knots to keep up with these tuna birds that we think are tuna birds. We can't keep up with them, and they're usually skipjack tunas when you're going that fast. But there have been days which is why we like these lures, where we see a group of 25 birds, they're circling, they're diving. We have to go 13 knots to keep up with them.
But then it's mahi.
But we still catch them. So that happens too, so it's hard to tell.
Right.
But our general rule of thumb is if there's some kind of structure out there, weed line, floater, patch of weeds, mahi. We've got 20 birds going crazy, most likely tuna.
So now that you see this giant group of birds and you're having a hard time keeping up with them, let's say you just caught those mahi, but now you need your tuna lures. So that's why we have those snap swivels. You take them off, you have them pre-rigged, you put your tuna lures on, you put one port, one starboard. But for the tuna lures, you don't want those lures in the whitewash. You want them way back.
So if you think there's tuna around, we want to send the lures back. How far would you say?
I would say at least 30 seconds per side for the tuna. For the long, I'll do 40 seconds, sometimes a minute. I'll just let it go. Like to the point where when you have to reel it in, if there's no fish on, it's like,
just exhausting.
Oh man, I gotta reel this thing in and there's not even fish on it. So for tunas, you can't really go too far. You definitely want it out of the whitewash.
Yeah. And some of this is seasonal. So if we're in the dead of summer and we're seeing birds, it's more likely gonna be mahi, because mahi are definitely a summertime fish. And it depends on where you are. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of where to start looking. So you know what to look for, you've got your rig, but like where do we look for them? So I would say if it's summertime, I wouldn't start trolling or searching, really serious searching for mahi until I'm in like 300, 400, 500 feet of water. You want to be in some deep offshore water. And the further out you go, there are days where you'll go to 1,000 feet of water. Now, usually if I can't find them past 1,000,
then you'll start running like up and down the coast.
Walking around. I think we've had a couple days where we will go to 2,000, but I think 1,000 is pretty much, if you can't find them there, I would then just stay in that depth and like run back and forth before going further. Whereas in the wintertime, you're more likely to catch, and you will catch tuna in the summer, but I specifically just say summer, that's when the mahi are around. But in the wintertime, mahi aren't really around, but you can still use this technique and look for tunas. So in the winter though, everything pushes in tighter, including the mahi. You might get a lone January mahi, you might get
a small school of 2 or 3.
Exactly, and you can do that. So, but in the winter time, I'll probably start looking for fish in 200 feet of water, and I won't go past 500. Anything past that in the winter, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're not out there, doesn't mean you won't have a day, but usually it's rough in the winter and you don't really want to run that far. And if you're not catching them in like 400, 500 in winter, I don't really know if they're going to be out there.
Yeah. But again, guys, they're fish and they're going to do what they want to do. If it's a really calm day in the winter and you find yourself in 800 feet of water catching mahi, then that's awesome. So I think that covers about everything.
Cover our preferred mahi and tuna fishing technique, our lures, how we like to target them and find them.
All right. So this is our tuna lure, not feather. We like dark colors, black and red. We have the bullet-shaped head and a 7/0 J-hook. This would be our go-to mahi lure. So we have the light colors. We have blue, white, and something. Let me put this down. You'll notice with the mahi lure, we have that concave-shaped head. Same 40-pound leader. And then the tuna lure, we have that bullet-shaped head. So think tuna, dark colors, bullet-shaped head. Mahi, think light colors, concave-shaped head. And then also under our mahi lure, we like to add a little mylar. Good. This was our chunked bait rig, so we have some 40-pound leader with a 5/0 circle hook.
And then Emily, someone had a question on single to double hook rigs. Like, do you use a double hook or?
We personally.
I
Oh.
I was just saying,
yeah.
We don't like the double hook because you can sometimes lose your fish or
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
But,
I think you answered it good.
all right. So do you guys have? I think it's now time for Q&A, or do you have a question?
So, Chelsea from our online feed asks, what's y'all's favorite between the two, tuna or mahi?
To eat or to catch? I guess it's both.
All right. So that's a really good question.
I would
feel
say
like
I prefer mahi
Yeah.
fishing because there's just so much action. They leap out of the water, they jump, and you can catch some really big ones sometimes. Eating, I feel like I want to say tuna.
Yeah.
We definitely.
I like making a good tuna salad or like a tuna steak. That's good.
Well, they're in the weed line with Greyhound.
Yeah.
Can I go with you?
Yeah.
I generally fish by myself and fish for, if I'm fishing for dolphin, I like to have something as a pitch bait, but I don't have time for like a live well or, cut bait, stuff like that, but I like to keep a couple lures. What lures would you recommend to use as a pitch bait?
Like for just pitching out a lure on like a spinner?
Some fish on whatever, or I see
Yeah.
fishing and just to cast.
So like if you don't want to have an actual dead bait is what you're saying?
Like say I'm done fishing a weed line and,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I see something.
Yeah.
I want to just cast to it.
I would say like a bucktail. I don't have any of those.
Question, this is Patrick from our Facebook Live. How many different types of bait do you bring when you're fishing for mahi and tuna?
So, you want to answer that? How many types?
How many types of, well, definitely at least one kind of dead bait, 1 to 2. So maybe squid and ballyhoo. If you have live bait, then I would probably just do 1 dead and 1 live. So maybe a box of squid, like a big 5-pound box of squid. And my live bait would be either pinfish or pilchards. That's probably what I would say. So I couldn't find a bucktail. We like bucktails, but sometimes you can also cast and retrieve these little rapalas. If there's tunas around, they'll definitely eat. This is a
you can get
yozuri.
smaller
But like
ones,
any
too.
type of diving bait is good too, fun to cast and retrieve. This is a yozuri. I said rapala. Yeah.
For mahi, what's your favorite key to go to, and what time of year do you like
Like
to
in the
go?
Florida Keys?
Yeah, Florida Keys.
So I would say that for mahi, actually, I mean,
The cool thing about mahi is because they're always moving, sometimes it's hard to pick one location because they could be biting really, really good off Isla Morada, and then you picked Big Pine, for example, and
They're
it
not
wasn't that
there.
good, and then a week later, those fish migrated to Big Pine, and you went up to Isla Morada, and they're not there.
If you know you want to catch mahi and you don't want to waste fuel looking for them, you could do it off of Miami. You could do it off of Fort Lauderdale, Lighthouse Point, because the water gets deep really fast. So
What time of year are you looking at?
Oh, the summertime for sure.
Yeah, June,
right now
July.
we're in April.
They definitely are showing up.
Starting to show up this time of year. Come like June is like, okay, mahi are showing up, slammers are showing up, and every year is different. But that's around when they come, and then they'll stay through August, September. You might catch them in October, and then in the winter, I wouldn't really go out targeting, but you can still catch them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we have,
Brad from our Facebook Live said, what's your favorite thing to do outside of fishing?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel when people ask that, and I'm always like, wow, I don't really know what we do.
I don't really either. I mean,
if we're not fishing, we definitely like free diving and scuba diving
yeah,
a
like
lot.
we still like boating. Like I think my ideal day off would actually just be like a nice
To take the
day
boat
day.
out, yeah.
I still want to go on the boat and enjoy the
maybe
water.
dive a little for some
Maybe
lobsters.
do some lobstering. Yeah, I would agree with that. And you had a question?
Yeah, when you're fishing off of overnight head boat and they're sleeping, I know you don't
Yeah.
sleep.
You can.
How safe is that for women to go on those types of fishing?
Yeah, I mean, we've never had a problem. We've never felt unsafe on the Yankee Caps. We've done that trip twice a year, 3 years in a row. The captain and crew are great. I mean, it's not something I would really worry about. Everyone's there to fish and have a good time. I personally never felt unsafe.
Yeah.
I do understand.
If you ever did, if you were a woman, you didn't want to be like the only woman on the boat.
Bring a
like
friend.
Bring a friend. That's an option. Bring a friend. But we also, like I said earlier, we host our own trips. And we definitely attract more women. Some kids come on the boats.
Like
some families.
We were hosting Holy Ridge trips, and we get more women on those trips than the trips that we don't host. I think that was probably a thought in our head before our first one, but once we started doing it, you kind of just realize everyone's there to fish, have a good time. No one's gonna bother you.
Yeah.
Be the best place to fish for tuna?
For tuna.
I mean, anywhere that you can find deep offshore water. So you can do that out of here, you can do it out of the Florida Keys. And tuna, I mean, you can start finding them at 200 feet of water. But a good thing to add is if you're in 200 feet of water and you start looking for tuna, you find these tuna birds and you keep catching bonitas. That probably means you're a little too shallow. So then I'd push out deeper, maybe to 300 feet. Still catching bonitas, try 400. And that's kind of a good way to know if you're in the right area. If you're catching bonitas, go deeper. If you're cutting into the blackfins and skipjacks, you're in the right area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Facebook Live wants to know how many, or what was the largest tuna that you guys have?
Oh,
Like
probably
the
the.
20, was it, how many
It
pounds?
wasn't 30. What looked like a 30 pounder. It was the upper 20 something pounds.
blackfin tuna,
It was a
not
blackfin.
yellowfin.
Yeah. We've actually never caught a yellowfin. So it was a
When we
very.
caught a yellowfin, we didn't boat it.
Yes,
we
that's
touched
true.
the leader and we lost it at the leader, so it makes it a catch.
But I feel like it's not
But
the
it didn't
same.
get boated, so it doesn't count.
So our biggest boated
Blackfin
tuna was like a 25, 26
It was close
pounder.
to 30 pounds. It didn't quite hit 30 pounds, but it was
On the Yankee Caps at night.
a good one.
Yeah.
So another Facebook Live from Sushi. When is the next Gale Force's Ladies Camp in South Florida?
That's a great question. So I guess we don't have anything planned right now for 2022, but all of our 2023 plans will be emailed out to our email subscribers. So that's galeforcefishing.com
April, though.
/subscribe. What?
We're still only in April.
Right.
We
Well,
got
but we
a
have
year.
2022
Yeah,
planned.
well, we have our women's fishing trip in Guatemala this November, which is booked, but we do notify everyone about fishing trips through our subscribers, email subscribers. galeforcefishing.com /subscribe is the best place. We do announce stuff on social media, but a lot of times things will fill up through the email subscribers first, and social media, if we announce on social media, there might only be a couple spots left. So our email subscribers, we call them VIPs. You find out first.
I got to ask a question. I watched a video where you took oatmeal
Yeah.
and you squished it up real tight and then wrapped it in about 20 feet of leader, and you were refishing
Yeah, we were fishing for yellowtails.
for yellowtails. I want to try that, but
Yeah,
I got to
no.
get the right consistency of oatmeal now. So
Yeah, the consistency of oatmeal can be hard because when you put the oats, when you put the oats in the bucket
With the water,
at first they'll seem dry, but they'll absorb water.
no,
so
they'll seem too liquidy.
they'll be too liquidy. Yeah.
It'll be like liquidy, and then if you wait 5 minutes, it absorbs, and then it becomes more like like a snowball, but an oat ball.
Well, it's really like letting out all kinds of chum at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Oh, I have a question. On bleeding tuna, how do you bleed your tuna?
Yeah. So there's like a couple different ways you can do it. Our preferred way is to go. I know you can like cut behind the fins, but we just basically break the gills. So if the gills are like on the side of the fish, this way, and like this is the head. If you go
take a knife
underneath, right here, like there's a little.
It's like the throat.
It's like the throat. You go underneath it, and you can pull with your finger on a small tuna. On a big tuna, it can be tough. So I'll actually just slide a knife in there and just push down. So it's like the gills are here. It's like right underneath it, and you'll find it. That's a good way to bleed tuna.
Do you have to bleed mahi too?
We don't.
You don't
Some
have
people
to bleed
do.
Mahi. Some people bleed everything. We don't. You have a question?
Is it necessary to have a planer when you're trolling?
A planer?
You don't have to have one. I would say it depends a lot on where you're fishing.
And what you're trying to catch.
But if we're fishing up here in these waters between Fort Lauderdale, Lighthouse Point, I definitely prefer a planer. I think they're very effective.
Because you'll probably catch with the planer. You could increase your bycatch to catching kingfish. You could catch bonitas on it. You could even catch a wahoo on it. So if you really wanted a wahoo, maybe I'd put a planer out. But if you're definitely going for the mahi or the tuna, it's not necessary.
But we have caught massive tuna on planers as well. So you don't have to have them, but I would say if you're having a tough time getting a bite, I would really consider putting one out. Yeah, question back there?
Do you guys ever catch wahoo in the same place as dolphin and tuna?
Yes.
Yes. So most of the time when we're targeting wahoo, that's usually around 200 to 400 feet of water. So in that area, depending on the time of year, you can catch mahi and tuna in there. But if I'm targeting wahoo, I'll be in 200 feet. And if I'm targeting mahi, I'll probably be out 500, 600 and deeper. So I'm targeting one over the other. I'll be in different areas, but
it doesn't mean
for wahoo. I would say that you're more likely to catch a mahi and tuna while targeting wahoo than you are to target mahi and happen to catch a wahoo. But we have caught wahoo in like 1,000 feet, but it's not as common. So if you want to catch all of them, I would target the wahoo. Oh, sorry. If you want to catch a wahoo and catch all three, though, I would definitely target the wahoo, and the mahi and tuna will probably come, or can come. Yeah.
Hi, this is for me, Becky. I'm the general manager here in Fort Lauderdale. I have a question. What is your bucket list place to fish?
Oh, Alaska. Yeah.
I would say, well, Alaska and Louisiana. We haven't fished Venice yet.
Yeah.
It's funny, we're going this weekend to Venice.
But we're not fishing.
We're not fishing in it. We're going to be a part of it. We don't have time to fish, unfortunately. But Alaska's been on our list for a while. We really want to catch
like halibut.
Some offshore salmon. We've done salmon before, but we caught them in the river in Washington. So
we also really want to catch rooster fish. So maybe like Costa Rica. Yeah.
Species I want to catch, so I'll travel to get them. Yeah.
Halibut or like.
So I noticed like you guys fish obviously in the Keys and here in South Florida, but if you had to pick, like, what's your favorite, either the Keys or up here?
I would say the Florida Keys is an awesome place because you have a lot of options. So if it's, let's say it's blowing 20 knots and you can't really get offshore, you can fish the patch reefs, you can fish the bridges, you can go to the backcountry and fish the mangrove trees. So when you're down there, you can almost, depending on how bad it is, but you can almost go out anywhere if the weather's not permitting for you.
If it's blowing like 15 to 20, you can usually still get out in the backcountry in the Keys. Up here, if it's blowing 20, it can be tough to get out. So I would definitely prefer down there, but it doesn't.
There's no inlets down there. So up here, if the inlet's really bad, it's really tough to get out.
And you had a question?
It was me. Have you guys ever catch swordfish, or what was the biggest one that you've ever caught?
So we have caught a swordfish. We never got an official weight for it, but we had a friend of ours that was a professional sword fisherman. He did it commercially for the restaurants and everything, and he looked at it and said it was over 200 pounds. So it was a very, very large one. He said it was close to 3. We never really know.
How big it was?
It literally fed our entire street.
I think
I still have some. It was like
in our freezer, and it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you save the sword?
Yeah. What time do we start? I mean, what time of day or time of year? Fish definitely bite well at the sunrise bite and the sunset bite. Those are great times to go out. But I would definitely encourage you, if you're going to miss the sunrise, don't let that stop you from going out. Just because you got out there at 9, 10 o'clock doesn't mean you won't get one at noon, 12, 2, 3.
Yeah, I would say like 8 o'clock is kind of normally like if we just want like a modest start time, we'll go at 8. But there have been days where we've had stuff to do in the morning and we don't go out till 1 o'clock. So it just depends on the day and the time of year. But I really wouldn't worry about the time super stressed. Just get out there when you can. If you're really not a morning person but you want to go fishing, go for the afternoon bite. It doesn't mean you're not going to catch one, but we do prefer to go out.
Really quick, if you were to switch out your boat for another boat, what would be your dream?
If we were to switch out a boat for another boat, what would be our dream boat?
I would probably get a 30 large Invincible.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be my dream boat. Yeah.
And unlimited income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You?
What would be your favorite app for boating?
Our favorite app.
We definitely like.
I have a handful.
We actually, I think, just did a video on this too that was a weather apps, but we like FishBrain. That's a good app if you're.
It gives you regulations, and if you don't know what the species is, you can look up other species and try and figure out what it is.
Navionics is a good one if you're trying to look for fishing areas. Those would be like our
top 2.
Yeah.
How many times have you dove Family Bird?
0.
Never.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Well, I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming, and they'll be here a little bit afterwards if you guys have any questions too. And for Facebook fans, you can ask them questions right at your either on westmarine.com
or you can comment your questions. I can go back and answer them in the comments.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thankful to have you here at West Marine in Fort Lauderdale. We actually did a whole series of women anglers that was really exciting across the country. And so it was just really great to meet. Each one of them too had such a unique fish that they really were passionate about. But again, I just want to thank you so much, and thank you all so much for coming. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Be the first to see new videos. Keep us on your radar by clicking subscribe. And for more fishing tips, tricks, and how-to guides, check out our advice and how-to section on westmarine.com. Wishing you tight lines and good times.